take you through my mason jar herb garden. This was another blog post that I have done before, but I just wanted to give you a little bit more insights into how it's created so that maybe perhaps you could actually create one for your house. Now, you'll notice it doesn't have too much that we're working with here. These are boards that my dad got that he had laying in his basement. So these are just recycled or upcycled wooden boards. I believe that this is actually maple. And we have our mason jars, of course. And then these are actual hose clamps. So I'm going to take the mason jar out of this hose clamp. And you could get hose clamps that have a specific diameter. So I'm just gonna move this one out so you can see how that works. Then you have these staple nails right here. This right here are Tapcon screws. Now you might actually need some other different type of screw depending on what you're going to be drilling into. This right here is brick, and it's a very old brick. So we needed to adhere this to the wall, not just with these Tapcon screws, but also use a glue adhesive on the back just to make sure that it's going to hold this weight. And similarly to a lot of other DIY projects, you're going to measure out how big you actually want this. And you can make something super simple where you just have one mason jar. In this case, we actually had 6 across on this and 5 across below because we wanted to see the mason jar fit just right below this in case this one, was growing up. It would have enough space in order to be able to grow up there. Now, one of the things that I would recommend is having small plants in here. I have to change these plants out probably once every couple years because these get to be a little bit too big for the container that they're in. But sometimes you could actually get miniature plants that are not going to be putting out so much roots. So you'll see I have a range of different types of plants that I am trialing here that I've actually not used here in my mason jar herb garden to start. But yeah, basically this is all you really need is the Tapcon screws, the wood adhesive, the wood, the hose clamps, the staple nails, your mason jars here. And you can see that I have a little bit of faux drainage down here. You don't really need that. I like the look of it, but it serves really no purpose other than that, other than maybe even seeing the water down here. But in the case if you have plants with deeper roots, which most of these don't have too deep of roots, you're going to want to give them as much soil as possible so you don't need to actually create any type of faux drainage if you don't want. What else can I say about this? Well, I don't have any kind of direct light coming in, and you'll notice that I don't have any grow lights from the top. So these are plants that are growing in a much more low light condition. So initially when I designed this, I really wanted to grow herbs here, but at the end of the day, I can't really grow herbs here because they're not facing and they don't have enough light. So unless I was going to put a grow light from above, I'm stuck with growing some horticultural varieties that are probably used to growing in the bottoms of forests where they're not getting too much light. So if you just take a look at what I'm growing here now, this is a peperomia. This is called Peperomia Pepperspot. I've actually never grown this before. So I'm going to be curious to see how well it does here. And if it doesn't do well, then I might have to actually move it. This is one of the asparagus ferns. I actually don't know what species this is, but this is, there's some browning right here, but this has actually been growing in here for probably a good 2.5 years now. This one is, actually don't know what type of cultivar this is, but this one is actually very similar up here. So I have this, but it's got this dark purple bottoms, which I think is really beautiful. So I'm just trialing that out right now. Here's one of my Ripsalis that has been growing in here for about a 1.5 years, I would say. It's looking a little, you can see that it's puckering a little bit right here. So this is actually now above a heater. So it does get a little bit of heat, so I have to make sure that they are watered enough. I have some Pelionias, which are now called Procris repens, and I have 2 different kind of varieties of them. I have this like lighter colored variety of Procris repens, and I have this darker colored variety that I have up here, which is kind of now behind this heating unit, so it's getting less light. So I wanted to have the lighter one here that could get more light, and then the darker one here, which is pretty much used to getting probably lower light conditions. And these will actually start to trail very nicely. I have these growing in some lower light areas of my house, and they seem to be very amenable to those conditions. So that's why I'm trialing them out here. Then right here I have an Episcia that has been kind of like trailing down for quite some time. And you can't even tell that it's actually coming out of this container unless I show it to you. But it looks pretty happy, so I'm going to continue to keep that in there even though it's a little leggy from here. Then I have this Weeweoscereus cactus, which is another type of jungle cactus. This one looks like from my epiphyllum that came off, and sometimes when I have these jungle cacti that fall off, I just kind of stick them into some potting medium and then they just root up. And then if you come over here, this one's a new one that I'm actually trialing in here. It's called Ruellia makoyana, and it actually just flowered. You can see it had these pink flowers. You can't tell that they're pink, but so it just recently flowered, and I'm gonna trial this out. And then right over here, I have an African violet, a type of African violet that I'm growing over here. So we'll see how well that does. But this is always like a trial because I grow these plants out for roughly about 1 to 2 years in this place before they actually get too large and I have to move them out or put them somewhere else. Or sometimes they don't do well and I have to move them out because they're dying back. So I have to be a little bit more mindful because, like I said, I'm not giving this area as much light as maybe some of the plants would require in order to be able to grow in these conditions. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more inspiration about the mason jar garden. And again, you could kind of put this in any part of your house, and it helps, you know, to give a little bit more room in your house as well because you're growing it vertically on your wall without actually creating a whole vertical garden.
The mason jar plant garden shows you that you don't need much to create a lovely living art piece in your home. If you have any more scrappy DIY plant ideas that you'd like to see, then feel free to share them in the comments below. And if you want to deepen your knowledge of plant care, then check out some of my other resources, including my book, How to Make a Plant Love You, the 125 Houseplant Care Spreadsheet and the Houseplant Care Tracker, and the Houseplant Masterclass, which is the first audiovisual course on houseplant care, cultivation, and more at houseplantmasterclass.com.